First, I'll show you something called the record scene. It's a quick way to achieve the optimal settings for different recording environments. Just hold down the menu button for a couple of seconds, and you'll find lots of different scenes to choose from. So lecture is the obvious one to use, but let's go through the options using the plus and minus buttons. And next you'll find conference, which might be the appropriate setting for a seminar. Meeting might be good for something like group work, and then there's dictation for when you want to record your own thoughts. We'll go with lecture, and once selected, this record scene will remain set on the device until you need to select a different one. Now, your lecture hall may have speakers positioned throughout the room, and you may be using a directional mic, but if not, aim to get a seat near the front in order to get a nice clear recording. So we're in folder A, and you can use the F1 button to skip through your different folders. These 5 folders currently have the default names A to E, but we can rename these in the Olympus sonority software, which we'll get to when we transfer recordings onto the computer. If you want to be super organised, you could record yourself stating a little information about the recording before the lecture begins. So let's hit record and notice the orange light pop on. Lecture on the development of emerging markets, development economics, Professor Owen Phillips, 29th of October. So simply press record again to pause the recording. And you'll notice it says pause on the screen. Then when the lecture begins, you just hit record again to resume the recording. So now we're recording the lecture, we'll want to add something called index marks. These are navigation markers which allow you to quickly jump to a particular point in the lecture when you come to listen back to it. And it's up to you how you use these index marks. Some students prefer to add one each time the lecturer changes slide, and this means the index marks neatly correspond to the PowerPoint presentation. Alternatively, you could use index marks to indicate important information you want to return to later. So this might be a key point, an important slide, a bit you didn't understand, or something you want to research further. To make sense of your index marks after your lecture, you need to keep a record of what each one relates to. For this task, I'm using the index mark template, which you can download from the previous step. To create an index mark, simply press the F2 button found at the bottom right of the screen. And every time you insert an index mark, you'll notice the orange light will flash and the index number will appear on the screen. So index mark 1 related to a key point, and I'll signify this with an asterisk. Let's add another index mark, and this time I'll add question marks for a point I didn't quite understand. Using symbols and abbreviations like this allows you to write less and focus more. So let's add another one, and this time I'll jot down the briefest of notes. Index 3, Theory of Laissez-faire Capitalism. If you get a break during the lecture, just remember to hit the record button to put it into pause mode. Alternatively, you could press stop, but bear in mind this will end the recording and you'll have to start a new one for part 2 of your lecture. So now, let's press the record button again to resume the lecture, and we'll add one more index mark. So, another key point. When the lecture ends, press the stop button to end the recording. Now, following the lecture, you may want to listen back to the recording on the device. So let's hit the play button, and by pressing the back and forward buttons, you can quickly skip through your index marks. Holding these buttons down, we'll fast forward and rewind. Ultimately though, we want to listen back to the lecture on our computer, and we'll be looking at that in the next video. We can now press stop and hold down and release the power button to turn off the device.